Hey everybody, AJ here from the Two Chaps Pod, welcoming you back to another show on the failure of purity culture. This part we're going to talk about the emphasis that purity culture placed on the white-knuckling ourselves into purity, how we could essentially make ourselves perfect, and how that's a distortion of the gospel. The gospel says that because God is perfect, he makes us perfect. And Coleman and I are going to discuss that in part 2. You can check the other part out on YouTube. Make sure you've liked and subscribed to our channel and pound that bell for notifications. Follow us on all other social media platforms. But without any other hesitation, here's part 2 on the failure of purity culture. And you brought this up, and we can dive into this now, because the next question is, like, what's the influence of modesty?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that was a word created. It wasn't, but like created by the purity movement, right?
Yeah.
Modest is hottest was a motto that was said quite often when I was like in middle school and high school. But who is that putting the pressure on?
Yeah. Well, modesty is a
Necessary,
biblical term,
correct.
but when I believe it's Peter that references it this way, that women should be,
1 Peter 4.
Yeah,
Should
should
be
be modest, but that their appearance is with good works.
Yeah.
I've got to look it up now.
It's 1 Peter 4, because I just taught it last week.
There you go.
Yeah, it's 1 Peter 4.
But that you realize that it's not simply the outward external appearance, or like the physical clothing that the women are wearing, but it's actually that their lives are glorifying God. That people that
I'm sorry, it's 1 Peter 3. Your adornment must not be merely external, braiding the hair and wearing gold jewelry or putting on garments, but let it be the hidden person of the heart with the incorruptible quality of a lowly and quiet spirit, which is precious in the sight of God.
Yeah. So, that's it, and so there is this.
While you're looking for that, let me just say, this is the problem that comes with the purity culture, and when we talk about modesty, modesty is biblical, and modesty is a good thing. I don't want to get that wrong. But what ends up happening with the purity culture is if a man is lusting after you, it's because you are being immodest.
Right.
So it put all the pressure on these poor young girls that have these creeps looking at them with no self-control.
Yeah.
Right? And I literally heard someone say, you want to dress that way? Then every man 12 to 77 is going to be looking at you. Right? And it's like, come on for a second. Just stop. For a minute, can we just relax and go, yeah, you should dress modestly because it is biblical to, be modest. But fellas, guess what? You're required as a fruit of the Spirit to have self-control.
Mm-hmm.
So control the eyes.
Yeah.
Lust is your problem. It's not her problem.
Yeah. And, I don't see many churches with armless men and men without eyes.
Correct.
So, and I bring that up because that's what Jesus says.
Yeah, if your eye causes you to stumble, pluck it out.
Yeah.
Because it's better to enter eternity with one eye than being able to see with both. Correct.
Yeah. And so these things, it obviously, Jesus is being hyperbolic in one sense. Like, he doesn't really want you to tear your eye out or cut your arm off, but he does want you to realize how serious this sin is, and what it will ultimately do to you.
Correct.
If you do not bring it to him, and if you let it fester in you, it will destroy you. It will kill you. But
that was not the focus. The focus was not the sin that you are committing, but they are the problem.
Right, yeah.
And it's like,
which sounds very much like another story in the Bible. At the very, maybe 3 pages into it,
The woman you gave me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's like, God, like it.
Yeah.
I look back now, and I know that this is like, I know that I need to extend grace to people, but I think back to some of the people that I heard speak at these camps, and like, I just want to time travel and like step up on stage and Kanye West them. Like, hold on,
Yeah.
I'm gonna let you finish in a minute, but let me tell you that everything that this joker is saying is complete trash.
Yeah.
Because let me tell you the story of Hosea. Let me tell you the woman at the well. Let me tell you that there's a God that loves you regardless of your brokenness, and he has offered grace to clothe you in his righteousness.
Yeah. The woman caught in adultery.
For the love of everything that is holy, please.
Is there no one left to condemn you? Then
No.
neither do I.
Yes.
Go and sin no more. And I mean, and this.
The funniest thing to me was the overweight pastors preaching about purity, because it's like, oh, you got a
Right.
log? Like, should I duck while you're teaching so I don't get hit by the log in your own eye?
Yeah.
Like, this is, it's comical and we laugh, but truthfully, like, I hope and I know, because God is a righteous judge, that those that perpetuated purity culture will be held accountable for the damage that they did.
Yeah.
And they should.
Yeah. Well, and this is it. This gets into it. We've talked about this some in one of our previous episodes, but we talk about so first of all, there's always grace. There's always forgiveness.
Correct.
for any sin, really.
Anything.
And that is, and to realize that that's sexual sin. That's not only heterosexual sin, but
Correct.
also homosexual sin. All transgenders, all those things.
Digital sexual sin.
Oh yeah,
Like-
absolutely. Yeah, there is forgiveness for that, and the blood of Christ has paid for all of it. There is nothing outside of that. So, but then the question becomes, okay, so why is it then good to wait until marriage to have sex? Why is it good that marriage is man and a woman? Why is it good that we do not put ourselves to
Defile the marriage bed, isn't it? What
that's what
Hebrews
says.
Yeah.
And defile the marriage bed by either before marriage or by our own lustful eyes and all this.
Yeah.
So why are those things good? Well, first, God commands it, so it's always going to be good. But second, it is because of the community that's there. In that, why do we want to strive for that purity? For the sake of the neighbors around us, for the sake of the gospel there, that this is because I know we talked about this, the thing that set apart Christians in the early the thing that set apart the early church, early Christians, like the first 200, 300 years, was the sexual ethic that they had.
Correct.
In recognizing this is a gift from God.
Correct.
And that women are not objects to be abused,
Mm-hmm.
and men are not, just going around sowing their wild oats or whatever.
Correct.
That this is actually a beautiful union that God has created for the mutual companionship and for the recreation, as you said, and the flourishing of life. And so the reason there are things that we talk about of like, this is what we are supposed to uphold as Christians, is for the benefit and witness of the community. That does not mean that you have to be 100% pure, because no one is.
Yes.
And
One person.
Correction. One person is. And that community is based around trusting that one person who was pure.
I mean, you need to look no farther than the first 3 chapters of Revelation to see that sexual ethic and the difference in the sexual ethic between that church and the society. in the letters that Jesus wrote to the 7 churches. I mean, every single one of them, societally, were dealing with temple prostitutes and orgies of a spiritual, pagan nature, right?
Yeah.
And their command is to not give into that ethic because that is not how they were designed or created.
Yeah. Well, or you go to 1 Corinthians when Paul's talking about sexual relationships, and he talks, and it's really interesting there. If you go back and read through 1 Corinthians 6 and stuff, he almost sounds double-tongued, as if, like, if you're married, stay married. If you're not married, don't get married. Like, there's this weird, but it's actually a beautiful tension that he sets up of, like, marriage is a beautiful gift from God, and if God has called you into it, do it. Go into it wholeheartedly, and give yourself into that. But if God hasn't called you into that, be that wholeheartedly, and so it's interesting that, because it sounds like, well, which way are we supposed to go, Paul? And he's like,
either.
God says, God blesses both. But what he does talk about is, with sexual sin, the difference is that all other sin, he talks about all other sins happen, like, externally.
Yes.
But sexual sin is sin against your own body, the gift that God has given to you. And so there is a warning that comes with it, that these types of sin will have a deeper impact than other sins that are there. Again, within the community itself, the relationships that you have in that
but
community.
The error was, it'll have a greater impact on your soul and your body because you're sinning against your body. The error with the purity culture was, oh man, this is like irredeemable almost. Right?
Gotcha.
And that's where the message became so distorted. Now, there were a series of books that I read when I was in high school. What they were called Every Man's Battle, and from what I remember of them, I haven't read them in decades now, but they were not necessarily perpetuators of the blaming the girls, no self-control. Like, they actually told men, like, keep yourself accountable, right? They talked about this idea of, like, reminding yourself to, like, bounce your eyes, right? Like, if you see an attractive girl, you don't want to lust after her, like, bounce your eyes. Like, the practical advice, like, that stuff was okay. But then you get into, like, the Josh Harris, who's now an avowed atheist. It's just a weird story, but he had, like, the I Kiss Dating Goodbye, published the book, and then is, like, married 6 weeks later. Like, it was really weird. But, like, maybe not 6 weeks. That might have been a little slanderous. But it was, like, very shortly after this, he wrote another book, and I forget what the name of that one was. But it was like, so I wrote this one, and then as God would have it, this girl came into my life, and then we ended up getting married. But it was just this perpetuation of, I keep going back to, like, the whole white knuckling, right? Ourselves into purity. Like, instead of, like, and I just wish that, like, I could go back and, like, talk to my high school self a little bit, knowing what I know now, and go, no, there's a greater purpose. Like, the greater purpose is not so that you can say that you were a virgin when you were married. Like, that's not the greatest purpose, but yet that was perpetuated as, like, the greatest purpose, right? That was perpetuated as holiness, and it's like, that's not like, what holiness is being made holy by the one who is holy. That your greater purpose is to taste and to see that the Lord is good. That your greater purpose is your chief end, which is to glorify God and enjoy Him forever. Like, if that could have been perpetuated, then you're like, okay, wait a second. Like, there's a different level here. It's not, I can't do this. It's, I get to do this.
Right.
And that's such a clear distinction that was never made. It was always, don't do this. Don't have sex. And don't hang out with girls that do, instead of glorify God. Not don't do this, but do this instead. And that it's traumatic in a lot of ways. Like, I feel good where I'm at now. Like, I don't feel any type of remorse. It just fires me up because I'm like, I'm very much a protector of teaching the Word of God, because I feel like that's what I'm obviously have been called to for my life. And when I see it being mistaught, as we talked about the protection thing, like I'm ready to like Paul and Peter stand toe to toe in Galatia, right? Like I'm ready to be like, no. You're gonna stop for a second, and we're gonna talk about this because you're not gonna mislead people anymore. It's not allowed.
Yeah.
Hey everybody, just want to thank you once again for spending some time with the Two Chaps Pod today. If you're on YouTube, make sure that you've liked and subscribed to our channel. Pound that bell for notifications so you can be notified when our latest content drops. If you're on social media, we are all over the place, including the brand new Threads from Meta. And I do want to remind you, for longer content, including pre-show and post-show audio, make sure you've subscribed on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts. We'll be back next week with a new episode of the Two Chaps Pod, and until then, stay uncultured.